Hello Bond and learners. For today's topic, we are going to learn about amphipathic nature of lipids. And at the end of the lesson, students will be able to define amphipathic and explain how this property applies to phospholipids. Second, students will be able to identify and describe the hydrophilic and hydrophobic components of phospholipid molecule. Third, students will be able to explain how amphipathic phospholipids form lipid bilayers, micelles, and liposomes in aqueous environment. Fourth, students will be able to relate how the amphipathic nature of phospholipids contributes to their key role in the structure and function of biological membranes. Lastly, students will be able to predict how phospholipids behave in different solvent environments. Now, bonded learners, are you excited to learn?
Good day, class! I have a question. Have you ever wondered why oil and water do not mix, even after shaking them? Today, we'll explore a molecule that does what oil and water can't. This molecule is essential to the membranes of every cell in your body. Do you wonder what this molecule is? Complete the word in the screen by guessing the letters that is composed of the word. Very good, it's phospholipid. Now, before we begin, why is it called phospholipid? You already know lipid pertains to fat and the prefix phospho pertains to phosphate. As you can see, a phospholipid molecule is made up of a glycerol backbone, a phosphate group, and two fatty acid tails, one saturated and one unsaturated. It also has a hydrophilic water-attracting head and a hydrophobic water-repelling tails. Can somebody identify and label the structures of the phospholipid in the screen? And label by choosing the following choices written beside the diagram. Wow! Thank you everyone, you done a great job. Now, I will explain it during the lesson why these parts are designated to their respective locations. Now that we know what components are in the structure of a phospholipid molecule, let's test how quick you can remember knowing the phospholipid structure. Let's focus as to why they are called amphipathic. This word comes from the word amphi, means both, pathic refers to feeling or affinity. So amphipathic means a molecule has both hydrophilic, which is the water-loving, and hydrophobic, which is the water-fearing parts. Now, let's dive in deeper to these two words, hydrophilic and hydrophobic. The head of a phospholipid is made up of either 3 carbon glycerol backbone and phosphoglycerides. Attached to this backbone is a phosphate group, which carries a negative charge. The tail part is made of 2 fatty acids that are water insoluble, and this can be either saturated, straight in shape, or unsaturated, bent due to double bonds. Because phospholipids have both a hydrophilic water-attracting head and a hydrophobic water-repelling tails, they are called amphipathic. This special structure allows them to form different shapes in water, such as liposomes, lipid bilayers, and micelles. Liposomes are small, round vesicles made of lipid bilayers. In this structure, the hydrophobic tails face inwards, away from the water, while the hydrophilic heads face outwards. One layer faces the inside of the vesicle, and the other faces the outside, separating the intracellular and extracellular environment. Micelles are formed by grouping or clumping the nonpolar regions, which is the hydrophobic tails, together and have the polar regions. Hydrophilic head pointed out, this only forms in single-layer spherical structure, and therefore, if cells are broken down, it can form micelles. Now, for a short recap, what is this structure? Raise one finger for a bilayer, 2 for micelle, or 3 for liposome. One use of a phospholipid is the construction of membranes. Membrane separates regions both in and around cells, and spontaneously forms lipid bilayers. It tends to form enclosed structures or compartments to avoid having exposed hydrophobic edges. The membranes tend to be self-sealing due to its amphipathic nature, specifically its hydrophobic effect, minimizing unfavorable interactions. The membranes also contains proteins, which give selective permeability to the membranes and cholesterol to the stiffening of the membrane. That is why it is asymmetry and forms holes, which is essential to membrane fluidity. As you can see in the screen, here's how amphipathic phospholipid structure forms a membranes to aid and support cells. Now that we have seen how phospholipids behave in different environments, let's take it a step further. What if their behavior doesn't just depend on the solvent, but also on their own structure and the environment around them? Let's talk about the 3 factors that affect phospholipid behavior, which is temperature, tail length, and saturation. First, temperature. Because phospholipids have both water-attracting head and a water-repelling tails, the way they arrange in a bilayer is sensitive to heat. At higher temperature, the hydrophobic tails have more energy. They move more freely, making the membrane more fluid. But when it's too hot, the membranes lose their stability. At lower temperature, movement slows and the tails pack more tightly, making the membrane more rigid. Second, tail length. Remember, the hydrophobic region consists of fatty acid tails. Shorter tails have less surface area for interaction and can move more, increasing fluidity, while lower tails stick together more easily, reinforcing the hydrophobic interaction and reducing flexibility. And lastly, saturation. If tails are saturated with no double bonds, they're straight and packed tightly, enhancing hydrophobic interaction and making the bilayer more rigid. If they're unsaturated, they have kinks that disrupts the packing. These kinks are bends to reduce tight-tail interaction and increase more membrane fluidity. Again, all because of how the amphipathic structure responds to its environment. Now, let us apply what we have learned so far. Earlier, I asked you how oil and water do not mix. I have here a glass of water and then oil. When I put the oil, what do you notice? Right, because water is polar and oil is non-polar. So, how do amphipathic molecules like phospholipids react? In water, they form bilayers or micelles. Their hydrophilic heads out, tails in. In oil, the behavior flips. Tails may spread out, head clusters to avoid oil. Let's test this with soap, which is also amphipathic. What did you notice when I put the oil? Yes, it's mixing. Exactly. Soaps arrange itself at the oil-water junction, just like phospholipids do in cells. Let's have a quick review of what we have learned today. Phospholipids are amphipathic molecules, meaning they have both hydrophilic head that loves water and the hydrophobic tails that fears it. This unique structure allows them to form bilayers, micelles, and liposomes in water, which is essential for building cell membranes. Their amphipathic nature makes membranes flexible, self-sealing, and selectively permeable. But their behavior can also change depending on the environment. 3 factors that affect this, namely temperature, tail length, and saturation. Finally, in different solvents like oil, phospholipids behaves differently. In water, they form neat bilayers. In oil, they rearrange to protect their polar head, just like soap, which is also amphipathic and helps oil and water mix. That's all for now. I hope you learned a lot and enjoyed exploring phospholipids with me. See you next time.